And so we'll find a place to put this recording and let you guys know where the recording is. So without further ado, I will do a quick introduction of Moneel. Moneel and I met in Tallinn, became fast friends. If you were in Tallinn, you know the energy level that was there. And so it was a really special time. And so I think the bonds that were formed in Tallinn are bonds that are going to last for, I suspect, a lifetime. So Moneel is located outside of London. He has a story about rheumatoid arthritis. And with that, I'll hand it over. So Moneel, go ahead.
Thanks, Dale. So I think what I'll do is I'll probably just do a little bit of a recap, because one of the things that just came to me is we all seem to be, I don't know how you say this, relatively learned in the health and wellness space. And I think what it would be good to do is to get all three calls, and however many calls we do, out to people, more people who maybe aren't as learned or who feel afraid to make change. Because I think the big thing that is going to happen for people is, for people that are on hardcore drugs, their decision point, their question is going to be like, well, do I stop my drugs or whatever? And the reality is, we're not here to tell anyone what to do. What we are here to offer is a different perspective on how things could go, because we've all been on medication, right? And there is a place for medication. I'm not going to vilify Western medicine. I think someone made this good point on one of the, I don't know if it was Evercoach call or somewhere, but if you break a leg, you cannot will it into being fixed easily, right? You're going to need some Western intervention and a splint or something to heal. Now, the rate of healing and all that sort of stuff, maybe there's an argument to say that the mind can influence that somewhere. So I'm not here to vilify Western medicine. I'm here to share we're here to share our experiences, our journey, and it is a journey. And if people get something out of that, then fantastic, right? So with that, true to my Accenture days, I'm going to try and share my screen and present some slides, just because I can't remember everything. So I just need some points. So, the first thing that I'll say is, I haven't fixed my rheumatoid arthritis, and I don't know if that's possible, and I don't know if I ever will. What I am at a point of is that it does not affect the quality of my life, mostly, and I do not have any medication to treat it at the moment. The only things that I have at the moment are supplements. And so before I go into this, people will be asking, well, how did you do that? How I did that is a lot of trial and error, a lot of self-awareness, a lot of information, a lot of podcasts, a lot of reading, and a lot of failing, right? What works, what doesn't work. So, the other thing is, please don't let me keep talking. If you guys want to interrupt, then please do. This is a conversation, not me kind of talking at you. Okay? Does that make sense? Right. I don't know how to. How do you? Is this supposed to do something? Okay, excellent. Right, it's kind of not working the way I had planned, but let's do 5 seconds. Okay, so so my story is, I'm just going to do this manually. My story is that I was diagnosed in 2012, and that was pure fluke. That was just a bit of luck. So I was working off-site for a consulting firm called Accenture, which is full of lots of type A, get shit done personalities, very pressured. If you work a 7.5 hour day there, you've just had breakfast, right? It's pretty relentless, right? So I was off-site, and I remember going between meeting rooms, and this was in the day when laptops were starting to get smaller, right? I remember picking my laptop, or trying to pick my laptop up after a meeting with like my right hand, and thinking, shit, I can't hold this. Like, what's going on? It hurts. Like, it hurts, right? It wasn't, I'm not strong. It was like, this hurts. So this started to happen more and more, and I thought nothing of it. And then one fine day, I think in the summer of 2012, I was with my eldest sister. Now, the thing I should tell you is there are 3 siblings, an age span of 11 years. I am the youngest of 3, and we all have autoimmune, right? So me and my eldest have rheumatoid arthritis. My middle sister has Crohn's colitis, right? And I don't think that's a coincidence. If for all of you, you'll know it's not a coincidence, right? But for the people that may not, what I will say is that if you do your research, you will find that the majority of disease that we experience in the world is preventable, right? And I'm going to let that sink in. And I'm going to say it one more time. The majority of disease in the world that is prevalent is preventable, right? And that is something you need to discover on your own, right? And the system is designed not to. There's a problem with the system, right? Firstly, the knowledge that our medical practitioners are being given, a lot of it is over 25, 30, 40 years old, right? Secondly, particularly when you come to North America, there is a lot of money in the health system, right? So there is no real incentive for people to not be sick. What there is incentive to do, and I'm not saying that people do this cynically, right? I do not think all healthcare professionals are cynical by any means. But, you know, if I give you a drug and that drug has side effects, then you need another drug to treat those side effects, and so on and so forth and so on and so forth. So I can keep you moderately ill, but so that you need me, right? And this is just my humble opinion, right? Everybody's entitled to their opinion. So, I'm not saying that I'm right or wrong. So anyway, going back to the conversation with my sister, I was at her house, described this to her, and she had been running a half marathon. And she had to walk it because she was in excruciating pain. So earlier that year, she had been diagnosed with RA, right? So she's like, look, it can be genetic. Why don't you go and see the doctor? So I went to see the doctor. He diagnosed me at the time with something called palindromic rheumatism, right? So not full-blown rheumatoid arthritis. And I mentioned that for a very particular reason. Which I will come on to. So, had hydroxychloroquine, a disease modifier, didn't really experience any side effects per se, just would have it twice a day, 7 days a week, right? And then, made a decision to leave Accenture in 2014 because I wanted to be a dad, and I wanted to be a dad that was around. And if anyone knows life in these consulting companies, if you want to progress, if you have two of you that are busy professionals, it's very, very difficult, because especially at your Deloittes, at your Accentures, at your KPMG, like, you are away 4 or 5 days a week, right? And you're traveling. So made a decision to leave, and so left there in 2014. Thought I'd left the consulting world. And at this time, I hadn't realized it because I thought it'd be all right, but there were fundamental issues in my marriage, right? And what I would say is there were issues in my marriage before we decided to have kids. But then I did what I suspect quite a lot of people do, and it's like, it's going to be okay, it'll be better when we have kids. And then you have one kid and you think, it'll be better when we have another kid, and it really doesn't. It just gets worse and worse and worse, right? So this is all happening all at the same time, right? Now, if we... before I go to the next slide, why that palindromic rheumatism sort of diagnosis is important is because I remember under NHS, so for the people that don't live in the UK, we have the National Health Service. So again, a big money machine, but for you as a patient, at point of consumption, you don't pay a penny, because that is covered from your national insurance contributions and the state, right? And the national insurance contributions are deducted from your salary, from everyone's salary when you work, right? There's NI and then there's income tax. And the NI is in part what helps to fund the NHS. So point of consumption doesn't cost you anything. And I remember going to see the rheumatologist at the hospital one fine day. And I think this was in 2017, 2018, right? And he just says, so I've checked the inflammation levels on your rheumatoid arthritis. And I said, excuse me, what? I said, I thought this was like the palindromic rheumatism. I thought it was the bit before. And he goes, no, you've got rheumatoid arthritis. Okay. So therein is the first problem, right? So in hindsight, he'd lost my trust. The system had lost my trust, because it's like, hold on, you've told me I've got one thing, and now you're telling me it's morphed into another thing. And there was no delta in between that says, oh, by the way, based on X factors, you don't have palindromic rheumatism, you now have rheumatoid arthritis. Now, people might say, well, why do you care? Why are you precious about it? It's just words. You're right. It is just words, but these words have a meaningful impact on people and the perception of their illnesses and the perception that their families have about their illnesses, right? So it isn't just words, right? It's very, very, very materially important. So that's why that's important. Right. So up until this point, now, if you have autoimmune conditions, and we've got people on here that have had them or been close to people that have had them, there's a couple of things. The first thing is it's the body attacking itself, right? So it's the body in a heightened state of stress thinking, right, some stuff's going wrong. I'm going to deploy some soldiers and fix it. The reality is there's nothing going wrong, right? Except that the body is attacking itself. So, you've got MS, you've got rheumatoid arthritis, you've got Crohn's, which affects the bowels. So you've got bowels, joints, brain, right, that are being attacked there, right? And then there's others in between. There's psoriasis, which is the skin. So you have your symptoms, and depending on the severity of the disease, and depending on kind of lifestyle and other factors, your autoimmune symptoms will manifest, right? So it'll either be, for me, debilitating joint pain, where at one point I couldn't do this with my shoulders, right? And I couldn't fall asleep on this shoulder or this shoulder because it just hurt like crap. And then what happens is it's a circle. So you have the flare up, then you get stressed out from the flare up, and that makes things worse. And then it just goes worse and worse and worse and worse. So the other thing you have is chronic fatigue. So I basically, somewhere between 2012 and sort of 2020, the pivotal year, as I call it, I started running. Why did I start running? And people are like, well, I'm tired, I feel fatigued. And I said, okay, fatigue is a very particular term, right? Fatigue, the way I describe it when people ask me is, imagine that you've gone for a week without sleep because you've been partying and doing other stuff, right? And that feeling where your brain's a bit foggy, and sometimes you can't see straight, sometimes you can't think straight, sometimes you forget the names of people who might not be the closest to you, but people who you've met 3 or 4 times, and you think, oh crap, what's his name, right? Or what's her name? So that also tends to be another symptom of people that have autoimmune, is just this constant brain fog and fatigue. And so I started running. I hate running. I still hate running, even though I've done half marathons and stuff, and I'm going to do a marathon. But running used to be the only time when, at the end, I would feel like myself, where I would feel the fresh, unlimited Moneel that can think straight, right? So that's why I started running. If I look back now, what was running? Well, running was like a lot of things, like medicine. It was just sellotape. It was sticky tape to mask over a problem, right? Without really addressing the cause. So, then I looked at, different foods. I went to see Ayurvedic practitioners, and, gluten's bad. And I just want to touch on gluten, right? And I'm not going to argue with anyone that has, that is allergic to gluten, right? But I started having gluten-free products, right? And for me, the problem was not whether it's got gluten or not, because now I have gluten. The problem is the processing of the food. And when you look at the processing of the food, gluten becomes irrelevant. Because the fact of the matter is, for thousands of years, since we've had stone mills, human beings have had gluten, and there hasn't been an issue, right? So what is it? Well, logically, it's got to be the amount of processing that goes into the food. Yeah. So it became clear to me that gluten in and of itself was not my enemy. What was my enemy was processed versus cooked food, right? And then I just had to mention that the marriage had been on the rocks for a few years. So I'm just going to pause here because I've talked a lot without really breathing. Anyone got any observations, thoughts, comments, questions?
Well, Moneel, I can tell you with respect to gluten, so that's something that I did cut out entirely for the first 2 years when I was beating MS myself. And, it's interesting because, I eat gluten now, but I have a lot more awareness with respect to my body. I don't go out looking for it, but interesting point was anytime I go to Europe, whether I'm in Barcelona or England, and I can eat bread no problem. I can drink beer actually, and I can't even drink it over here because I just get bloated immediately. And that's where I almost had that same thought process, that it's not the gluten per se, but it's more so the processing of things. Because I think in Europe, let's say you go to a bakery, they want you to eat that bread within a couple days at the most. Whereas here, you can stick that bread on the shelf for like at least a month, and you're all right.
And that is a fantastic point. You're not the first person to mention this from like kind of the North American continent. There is what I would invite you guys to do, and to share this person with everyone that you know. There is a lady on Instagram called the Food Babe. And what she will do is she will find random cereals and stuff, right? And she lives in the States, and she will take a picture of the ingredients, and then she will highlight some certain ingredients, and she will take a picture of the equivalent that's sold in Europe.
Right.
And she'll say, because, you know, of EU legislation, the shit that we put in the States is it's illegal in Europe, right? To put it in food, because, you know, certain dyes, certain colors, preservatives, like you say, to your point around, you know, bread staying, you know, on the shelf for a month. So on that point, Sanjay, the thing I would ask people to do is, you know, try and cook at home. And, you know, I say this to my mum because my friend's like, oh, you should be gluten-free. And I'm like, no, my mum makes certain Indian foods at home. And I know mostly that she's prepared them. All right, there is some questions around the quality of the ingredients, which you can't always know. But I've never felt like really bad for a long period of time after having that food. Right? So, you know, look at the ingredients on the stuff that you buy. If you can't say stuff, generally that's not the kind of shit you want to be putting in your body. Yeah.
100%.
If you've got like a meal and it's got more than 5 ingredients on it, it's your choice, man. But I would typically stay away from it. And this is if you're healthy or if you have like an illness, right? It's just good food practice, right? So I guess you're probably revealing now that one of the things that's really obvious about how I've managed this down is food, right? But that's just one thing. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so we're building a picture. So, you know, going back to 2020. So I think I mentioned this before. I was, you saw it in the previous slide, in that one. So that is a 5x5 extension that I had built. Why did I have this built in the middle of COVID? Because we'd moved into this house in 2016 and I had a vision of what I wanted to do with it. And just, you know, in the 4 years, stuff was just falling apart. And plus we were in COVID all the time. Plus I had stock from my employer at the time that I could sell to pay for it. So I was like, right, we're going to do an extension. My mistake, that extension became bigger and finished to a much higher standard than it needed to be or than I'd planned. So that added to the stress as well. So that's why that random picture of this roof lantern and the building site is there, right? So while this is going on, COVID happened. So I was doing most of the homeschooling because my ex was busy working and I was trying to work as well. And then I had a couple of flare-ups, and these flare-ups, like I said, I was living on a building site. So she'd taken the kids to live in a kind of a dust-free Airbnb for a bit, which made sense. I was living on the building site. The builders were not great. You know, every mistake I could have made in terms of, you know, appointing builders and not doing the research and not doing the due diligence, I basically made on this project. So, you know, the gift from that is that's never going to happen again if I do that sort of work. But I remember there was one night I couldn't sleep. I couldn't get comfy on either shoulder. I had something called rheumatic fever. So because your immune system is fighting, it thinks it's fighting something, you get fevers. So I was waking up in sweats, you know, shirt dripping wet. Then I thought I need to be sick or I needed to go to the toilet. It took me 5 minutes to get out of bed. Took me 5 minutes to walk to the bathroom. Took me 5 minutes to sit down on the bathroom because the inflammation had gone from here to everywhere, right? Everywhere. Couldn't sit down on the toilet, sat down on the toilet, then, you know, cold sweats. Then I'm like, I'm going to be sick. Am I going to go to the toilet? Like what is going on? In the end, nothing. Took me 5 minutes to get up from the toilet, get back into bed. Then my ex comes over and I said, look, I'm having a flare up. And she's like, okay, I've just come with the kids. I've bought you some drugs and something to eat. And she's like, can you come downstairs to open the door? Because the keys for the house are at the flat. And I was like, I can't move. I can't even get out of bed. And I said, forget coming down. At the time, if I look back, walking down those stairs would have been the equivalent of running a half marathon without training for me. That's how like bad I was, right? So she went back, she got the house key, she came in. My daughter brought me some cookies and some ibuprofen, because obviously you can't have the ibuprofen on an empty stomach. And that happened twice that summer. I remember going to the rheumatologist, and he gave me a steroid injection. And for anyone in this audience that's had steroid injections, they are painful at the best of times. But when you put them in bony bits, like your feet and your shoulders, you know, that needle really hurts, right? And it's 3 months relief at best, right? And I remember the doctor saying to me, so I'm 46 now, and at the time I was, I don't know, 44-ish, maybe 43. And he said, if you don't have this drug, right, methotrexate, you will need a shoulder replacement by the time you're 46. And he goes, you do not want a shoulder replacement because the quality of your life will change massively. You know, the things that you take for granted, or that you used to take for granted, you will not be able to do, you know. So, you know, go on this drug. Now, my sister had been on this drug, so I'd done some research around this drug. And even pharmacists, so even the people that dispense your medicines, will call this a dirty drug, right? It's one of those, you know, catch-alls. It's like, oh, we use it for this. But it works for this as well. But it works for this. And all of the time, it's more money that's being printed for the pharmaceutical company, right? And the thing I took away from the research I did about methotrexate is it's basically like having a mini flare-up every single day of your life, right? But on a smaller scale. And I was like, well, I don't want that. I'm not putting that in my body, right? So then I got back into my routine of kind of weight training, got into meditation. So I'd done mindfulness for a while, got into meditation with Ziva meditation, and just started making these incremental changes, right? Now, at the same time, don't forget about my marriage, right? Because there's a reason why I've mentioned all this. At the same time, my ex, and I think I'm in a better place now. So we were never meant to be, right? If I look at it now, that relationship was never, it just was not right from day one, okay? And because I knew it wasn't right from day one, maybe subconsciously, did I play my part in sabotaging it before any key events happened? I would say without doubt. Did I do it consciously? No. Why is that relevant? Because I'm dealing with all this stress. There's COVID, there's the house extension, there's this dysfunctional marriage, and it started getting more and more toxic. So one fine day, when all this work was done, actually, I said, look, the house is done. Because I'd done it to keep the family together. You know, we would have had more space. We didn't need to kind of be on top of each other, me and the ex. So that's why I spent like whatever it was, 150, 200,000 pounds and have loads of debt from it. But she then decided within 3 months of it being done that she was going to move out. And she said, it's toxic. I said, look, I appreciate that I've been resentful for the past 5 years and I've been toxic. But since I found out certain things about you, I've just let it go. And I've let it go because there is no way back for us. You know, there was a time when I said to you, my door is always open. That is gone, right? And I need you to be really, really clear on that. But I said, that said, we've done the house. Let's just wait for the house to sell and we can go our separate ways. And then she decided no. So she moved out. We jointly own this house, but then she stopped contributing. We send both our kids to private school. She whittled her contribution down to effectively zero, citing the fact that, you know, she was forced out of the house and she had to move. And I said, well, you know, this isn't true. So most of 2021, whilst I didn't have flare-ups, I just spent angry and missing my kids, because I'm lucky, I guess, because I get to see my kids 50-50, but I was super pissed, right? Because I want my kids all the time. You know, that I was born to be the father of those two little girls. right? If there's nothing else I achieve in life, it was to do that, right? It was to be their daddy. And so there was a lot of resentment. And then 2022, the anger shifted. I was still angry and resentful, and this still caused stress in my body, but I was angry because of the financial hole that she'd left me in. And while all this is going on, I'm meditating, I'm looking at food, I'm focusing on sleep, I'm running, I'm strength training, I'm doing all of this stuff. And but I'd never had a flare up. So the reason this is relevant is so my life was kind of like up here, right? From, let's say, 2012 to 2020, right? In terms of levels, like we're both earning well, quality of life is good, standard of living is high. What more do you want, kind of thing. And then she left, and then financially my situation got worse and worse and worse. But I've never had flare-ups like that again, right? And I just need to let that sink in. So net, as I stand here now, I'm starting a new job next month, but I'm essentially, for all intents and purposes, broke, right? But I am the strongest, the healthiest, and the happiest I have been in about 15 years. In fact, probably ever in my life, right? And so why is that? So the thing I want to say to people is there is no quick fix, right? There is a reason diets don't work, because they don't work, right? They are not sustainable. What works is fundamental lifestyle change. What works is asking yourself, what do I want out of life and who am I, right? And once you start to get closer to yourself, once you start to sit with some of that discomfort, it's an epiphany. And that's the epiphany that I had, which is why I've put this in bold and underlined, and I probably should have put it in really big letters. But it was 2023, it was the year of my mindset shift. And it's like, okay, I can spend my time being angry at things I can't control, at people that probably essentially don't really care, or I can do something about it. And so all of the tools that I'd learned, all of the knowledge that I'd picked up, it just kind of came together. And then the icing on the cake, like Dale says, was Super Coach. Now there's a reason for that. So in 2022, whilst I had kind of checked out of my previous role because I just wasn't enjoying it, I'd enrolled on a health and wellness coaching course, right? And then I started doing peer coaching, and I thought, shit, I quite like this. And then actually people would say, you're actually quite good at it. And then I was like, So then, fast forward to 2023, I had burnout actually in 2022, which I missed out from that job. So I was off work for about 3 months, but that was nothing to do with the rheumatoid. That was just my head couldn't process stuff. So I was like, I just need some time off. So I just said to the doctor, I need some time off. The divorce is like, I need to do this before I do break. So he's like, fine. So he signed me off. And then in the end, in February of 23, I got laid off from that job anyway. I got made redundant. So now I'm like, okay, cool. This is awesome. Not exactly how I planned starting my coaching business. And then I enrolled on CBC. And what I did was I just invested in myself. And so when I talk about mindset, the first mindset shift was investing in myself, right? Any money that I spend on me and on knowledge is never going to be money wasted. The question I was wrestling with is when will I get the return? Well, I don't worry about that now. I've got the knowledge. No one can ever take that away, right? And so that would be my invitation to people. The second thing is I've also spent a lot of time with myself. So, I will meditate 2 or 3 times a day. I signed up to Positive Intelligence. I don't know if people have come across it, but it's this idea of mental fitness. So it brings the idea of meditation and mindfulness into snack-sized portions that you execute throughout your day. And then what happens is when you notice an emotion in your body or something, you just sit with it, and then you do a little moment of mindfulness. You can do these with your eyes open while walking. You don't have to sit down and cross your legs and chant Om, right? It's not like that. So I started doing things like that. And so for me, the thing I would say to people, I don't know why any of these pictures aren't displaying, but, I found the phoenix, rising out of the ashes. And so it was finding my tribe of coaches and people that are into personal development and growth mindset. It is spending less time with people that are not in that space. And that's not from a judgmental perspective, but that's from protecting the bubble that I have around me. And this is what I would, and Nancy will be a great person to talk to about this for people that don't understand this stuff. But everything is energy, and we are the custodians of our energy, right? We are not victims, we are owners, right? And I'm not lecturing anyone here, because at the age of 46, I'm only just realizing this, right? But we can manipulate our energy. And if we put a bubble around us that says nothing is going to penetrate this and only good things are within me, and I'm full of love and I see love in everybody who I interact with, I see love. I don't even get road rage anymore. I just, there's that split second when someone cuts you up and I think, there might be some bad shit going on for that person. So, on they go kind of thing, right? And I'm not going to say that I'm fully evolved here and I'm like the Buddhist, right? But these little things that I notice in my behavior, and where the magic is? The magic is not in fixing this. The magic is not in being evolved. The magic is in realizing the shit is happening. And looking at yourself as if you're on a cinema screen and say, right, is that me? Is that the best way? Is that like, who is that talking? And then take a breath and then carry on. And so my summary for everyone is, there is no quick fix to resolving your autoimmune. Like everything in life, it is hard work. I get guys at the gym who are like, wow, you're really lean. And I'm like, and they're like, how do you do that? And I say, hard work, right? Hard work and discipline. Everything in life pretty much goes back to, if you don't want to call it hard work, call it ruthless execution or consistency. But it is those two things, right? It is discipline and is execution of that discipline. And I know this is probably not what people want to hear. And that's why you've got this team of learned people who are hosting this call. So, Dale and Sanjay have shared, Stu's got some knowledge. He's fixed his autoimmune. Nancy has got fantastic knowledge around a lot of things, but reach out to people, right? Because help is there, and help doesn't need to be going to the doctor and getting a pill. The first step is, if you realize that you have the most advanced pharmacy, bar none, inside your own body, that is the day your life will change. And I mean that. And I mean that because you've got at least 4 people on this call that are living and breathing that value. And we're not selling anything. We're not shamans. We're not, this is real shit, people, right? And so, am I 100%? No, but I feel the best I ever have. And it's going to be a journey till the day that I die, where I just make incremental steps to feel better and better and better and better and better and better and better. Right? And you guys can do the same. So this is just a summary. I think the big thing is mindset, a mindset shift, an energy shift, but functional clean foods. And I'm just gonna talk to this. So there are a lot of people that describe themselves as foodies, right? A foodie, in my book and from The Reckoning, a foodie is a person that can recognize very sophisticated flavors and combinations of flavors in the foods that they eat. Further, they can then take that knowledge to an extra level to cook healthy meals, or not healthy meals, but creatively, just by not using recipe books necessarily, but just by experimenting and thinking, well, this has this flavor, this is going to balance this out, right? I'm going to try some stuff, right? Most people in my life, at least, that say they're foodies just like to eat nice food, right? That in my book is not a foodie, right? And I'm not saying that I don't have KFC or McDonald's now and then, but what I've done is I've got my body to a point where it can deal with this stuff, right? Now and then, yeah? And that's where Sanjay's point around having gluten now and then is really, really important. If I eat gluten every day, 3 times a day, guess what? I'm probably going to have a problem, right? But I don't do that, right? So everything I eat is functional, right? And it comes from when I had an online personal trainer, and I used to measure my food and what are the macros, how much carbohydrate is in there, how much protein is in there, how much good fat is in there, because it all needs to be balanced, right? So I'm not going to sit here and vilify foods and say, go meat only or go vegan or whatever. The one thing I would say is a reduction in dairy has been key for me. And I would also break up dairy. So if I were to have a large latte that is made from normal milk, I will have problems. I will pretty much go straight to the toilet, right? Because there is a particular issue with milk, right? But I can eat a lot of cheese and the same thing doesn't happen. Now the cheese has a different impact because it is still dairy. So, you know, the one thing I would look at is maybe just try experiment, get curious, right? Get curious with your body. Just like, right, for 3 months, I'm not going to have milk or dairy. See how your body responds, right? A lot of this is just about experimenting and just playing around. The other thing is sleep. And I've put quality of sleep, not quantity of sleep, for a reason, right? So the first point to make about sleep is the most powerful, most effective drug in the world, bar none, right? Science shows this, right? Your brain detoxifies. There's a lot of good shit that happens with sleep, right? And we sleep in 90-minute cycles, okay? And we go through different phases of sleep. So I wear an Oura ring. I am not paid by them. I am not endorsing it. But what it helps me do is it helps me correlate how I think I slept versus how I slept versus how I feel, rather than me just kind of doing it by feel. And I'm a massive fan of, you can't really, you can't track progress unless you measure things, right? And I'm not saying get anal with the numbers, but I'm just saying until you see some data and you can spot some trends, it's going to be really, really difficult for you to track changes that you're making. And it's going to be even more difficult for you to track if those changes are working for you or not. So, you know, when I talk about sleep hygiene, it's like trying to avoid screens, you know, get into bed at regular times, read a book, maybe meditate, you know, dim the lights, all that sort of stuff, right? No food for 2 hours before. I stop having caffeine at 12 at midday because caffeine is a half-life. So depending on how your body metabolizes it, if you're having caffeinated drinks at 7, 8, 9, 10 p.m. into the evening, at about 2 a.m., when your body really, really wants to sleep and your brain really wants to go into deep sleep to detox, it can't because there's a load of caffeine running around keeping it up, right? And so then what happens is you get in a vicious circle. You wake up feeling tired and you think, I'm going to have coffee, and then that 3 coffees a day becomes 4 coffees a day, and you're in this vicious cycle, right? So, you know, that talks to sleep quality as well. Knowledge. Like I said, and I'm sure we would all share this in common, is my job on this fine earth now is to serve. And I used to think I don't want people to feel the pain that I did. I've changed that to, I do want people to feel the pain, but I want them to have the support and the knowledge that I didn't when I felt the pain, right? And that's a big difference, because you can't heal unless you feel, right? Unless you feel what's coming up for you, you are never, ever going to heal. And it kind of makes me emotional to say this, and I don't want to inflict pain upon people, but, you know, we are very, very good at distracting and not feeling pain. Feel the pain, embrace it, because it is a teacher. That trauma is trying to tell you something. Yeah. Listen to it, respect it, love it, embrace it, and you will start to see your life change, right? So strength training, I was spending, and I'm not a Mind Valley advert here, there are other programs, but I now literally have gone from an hour and a half of weight training when I go weight training to 15 minutes flat, 4 times a week, right? And trust me, my body feels like it's been brutalized, right? Like I feel like I've done some work. So it's not that I'm just kind of going in, walking around the weights machines and kind of walking out. You know, this stuff works. And then the other thing is just to try and adopt more of a growth mindset. Know that you don't know everything. Know that there's a bunch of stuff that I don't know. And it's just to be better and better every day. And the biggest wrapper, the wrapper of protecting your energy, is to listen to your body. You know, if I am tired, then I will cancel plans. You know, if I feel like I need a recharge, I'm essentially an extrovert with introverted energy. So there are days when I need to focus, when I will literally just sit at home and be on my own for 2 days because I do not want to be around people. And so this is experimentation, this is self-awareness, and this is how I got to where I am. So yeah, that's me done.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Moneel, that was incredible. And there's a lot of information there that's really useful. And a lot, just about everything you said totally resonates for me personally. Do you have time for a couple questions?
Yeah. Sure, absolutely.
So one thing I'll ask, just kind of kick off the questions maybe, is, was there for you a definitive sort of aha moment? What was the thing, if you can remember? And I'm trying to remember for myself, like in my own case, there's probably several aha moments that I have to think about, but I'm just kind of curious, when did you sort of make the shift, and what were the circumstances of that, coming from what your doctor was telling you in 2012 to the realization that you could really, that you were in charge of your own body? What was the moment or moments?
It was a series of moments. So the first guy I started listening to was a guy called Dr. Rangan Chatterjee. He does
Oh, yeah, no, Chatterjee. Okay.
He's an Indian general practitioner, lives in the north of England where I'm from originally, and he practices functional medicine, right? And so I started listening to his podcast, and so this really unlocked this entire world. And his first book, called I think The Four Pillars of Health, right, talks about a lot of this stuff. So that was probably one, Dale. The second one, whilst I was in the midst of shit, is I was on some medication, but it was when I started meditating. I did this like $500 video recorded meditation from this lady in New York, right? And I started doing it twice a day. And I actually remember emailing her saying I could not do lat pull downs for 2 years because I couldn't get my arms above here. But I said, after doing this, I now can, right? And so that was the taster. And the penny still didn't drop. That was like, okay, there's something in the mind here. But I didn't even have that awareness. I was just like, shit, I need to meditate, right? I've got to meditate the shit out of my life, right? I'm going to meditate like no matter what, like meditate, right? Actually, it wasn't about the meditation. It was about the mindset shift. And so that would probably be the big aha moment, is when, I realized we look at quantum energy and Joe Dispenza and stuff like that. And you look at, the idea that doesn't matter whether things are real or not. The consistent thing is everything is energy vibrating at different frequencies, right? And then your thoughts are energy vibrating at different frequencies. And how you take people's thoughts, how you put your thoughts out there, not only affects you, but it affects everyone else, and it affects the world. And that was actually, I tell a lie, that was probably the other aha moment that said, we are all interconnected, right? We have an impact, even as we sit here talking about this. And I don't know who's going to watch this or if anyone's going to watch this, but just by us being here, we are eliciting change in the world, right? For the better. And those were the big moments for me in answer to your question.
Yeah.
Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Totally. Thank you for that. Does anyone else have any questions you want to throw in? Actually, if you don't mind, Moneel, if you don't mind, stop sharing, we can get everyone back on the screen.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
Moneeel, I just wanted to say thank you for taking that time and to be so vulnerable and sharing your story. I know how hard that is sometimes. I'm a consultant as well, and to admit that you have something that's going on, something that's breaking you, is a sign of weakness to them. And so I had to keep my personal shit quiet for years and years, because it was like, oh, Sanjay can't handle this client because what if it causes him stress, and stress is what causes MS and all this bullshit, right? But you hit on the biggest point, which was my aha moment as well, is that no matter how much exercise I was doing, no matter how much good food I was eating, I could do that day in, day out. But if my mind wasn't in line, meaning mind-body connection, and meaning that I started to understand that, hey, if I eat this, it's going to mess me up.
Yep.
If I didn't have that awareness, honestly, nothing that I was doing would have even helped. And that's where I go back to saying, the best piece of medicine is this thing that we've all been equipped with. We just have to figure out how to use the damn thing, right? And that was my biggest piece, bigger than food, bigger than exercise, which I was doing, it was basically fixing and healing my mind, which was broken. Running to pity party, running to, oh, why does this always happen to Sanjay? And it was a biggest shift that I had to take, generational patterns out of my body and shitty energy and frequencies that were passed on. And it's something that I worked my damnedest to not pass on to my son. And, working on the things that maybe I have, but even in my talk, I said the exact same thing. We're all about energy. We're all about frequency. And if your circle or your friends aren't giving you that same energy and you're not getting it back from them, you got to cut it. And that's something I've done personally, and I've done it for the best. I mean, for every 5 friends I let go, I grabbed 5 CLC friends. And honestly, I would rather be with those people, even if it's on a one-dimensional Zoom call. But it's just the return and what you're able to give them as value is just, you can't even put a price tag to that.
Yeah, I agree. And but look, we talk about this as if, oh yeah, we do this shit everywhere. We don't, right?
No.
We've lived this journey. We've felt the pain. It's hard. And I'm going to look you square in the eyes. I'm going to tell you, if you want to fix stuff, you can, but know that it's hard. Know that there are days you're going to feel like no matter what you try, it doesn't make a blind bit of difference. But what you have to do is trust in yourself, and trust that if something doesn't try, give it a couple of weeks, try something else. Keep trying.
Yeah.
The day you stop is the day your disease will own you.
100%. Yeah? Or the day that you listen to your doctor is the day that your disease will own you.
Yeah, and look, I've been lucky. I go to the rheumatologist. I mean, I don't even see him anymore. He's a member of the same gym, but he's like, look, if this stuff works for you, then I'm not going to get in the way of it. Just keep doing what you do. And that, to me, in the eyes of a traditional, and he's in his 60s, right?
Yeah.
That is progress. And so, we just need to keep that going. And someone said this was really nice to you. If you take the word impossible, it has possible in it, right? I am possible.
100%.
So, just please know that, please believe that, and know that there is love and there is help out there. Don't feel trapped. Don't, whatever it is, don't let it consume you, right? Because that's not going to end well. And I would not wish that upon anyone, and I'm sure none of you guys would either, right? So
honestly, I just love what you just said, the impossible, because if you again take the first part of that, now I'm possible, right? So you're capable of doing whatever you want, providing that you actually want to do it. I think for me, that was the biggest thing, is that, yes, I could eat right, I could do whatever, but if I wasn't mentally checked in to be like, okay, I'm all in because I don't agree with medication. Moneel, I've never taken medication from day one. I was thankful that I was able to do that. But, that's the thing is that, let's say this bottle of THC syrup that I have here, right? If I was to tell you that if you lick the side of this bottle 3 times a day for the next 3 months and you'll be better, chances are there's a good chance that you'll actually get better, because again, you're planting
placebo. Yeah,
exactly.
Power of placebo. I fully agree. And the other thing I'd say is I've been lucky, right? I've been able to work from home. I've been able to try stuff. There are days when I've had to work from bed, and not everybody has this, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't want people to think, well, anybody can do this, right? Because you can't. If you're doing 12-hour shifts, like, life's hard. If you're doing night shifts, life's hard. Like, it is. But there's a bunch of other things that you can do. And the most important thing is, if you feel helpless, if you feel lost, if you don't know where to start, just reach out for help from any one of us or anyone who you know in your life that is of similar mindset, and just make a change. Even if that change is stopping sugar.
Yeah.
Right. Don't have sugar in anything. See how you get on. Right. No, great point. Thank you.
And even with jobs, right? At the end of the day, I have my own family even here, a sister with 2 degrees has the shittiest job in the world, constantly bickering about it. And I said, look, Sonia, you signed a piece of paper to say, yes, I'm going to work here. You can also sign another one that says, yes, I'm out. Mm-hmm. That is on you to make that decision. how much are you going to take in and kind of live with it, have your own autoimmune issues because of the fact that you're letting stress ruin your life at this point. And that's what I told her. You have two choices: fix it or fuck it. There's no other option, right? And fix it. I mean, you can take those negative energies and stress out, providing you want to do it. If you don't want to do it, you're literally going to be here 5 years later, coming on and doing the same damn thing.
Yeah. And again, you know, just going back to it, it is hard, but unless you start confronting yourself, and, you know, this is one of the reasons why I run, like this is why I want to do like the London Marathon, because the one that's hard for me is 13.1, right? A half marathon, because you're on your feet for like 2.5 hours. And then what starts to happen, and this is a bit like, you know, your spiritual awakening or your self-awareness. What starts to happen is you peel back the layers of bullshit. Like, oh, I run because I want to change the world or whatever. Like literally at 2 hours, 20 minutes, 800, it's the 800 meters, that 800 meter sign is a killer because they put it up quite innocently in big letters. That's still a track lap, right? It's far, right? When you've been running for 2 hours, like it's far, right? I don't care what anyone says. Like when you've been running for 2.5, like it's far. And so you just think, right, I'm going to finish. That's it. Whatever I have to do to finish, I'm going to finish, and nothing else matters. And so then when you start to peel all that stuff back from your life, then thanks to you, then life gets a lot better. And that's when you can start to progress. And that's when you can start to make the difficult decisions around, am I cutting people? Am I cutting my job? What am I doing? You know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, great point, well made.
Real quick, guys, because I have to leave and I don't want to leave without saying anything. I hate that.
That's okay. I think we're about done anyway, right? Unless anyone's got...
Yeah, I have to jump in another coaching in a minute. So, but thank you, Moneel, again for that really informative, and it was really a pleasure for me to be here. I have so many thoughts on my mind now. I would love to give you more thoughts of, you know, from a naturopath perspective, from a medical perspective. There are a few more things, and I dealt with, you know, patients like you guys in my practice for 4 years, and I had good solutions. And I mean, you do know my healing work and all that you know is then put together to a big one, holistic kind of approach. So I will think about maybe doing some webinar on my own, and then, you know, invite you back to that and just continue, because there's so much more to say about that.
And I would, you know, I would love to open that up to as many people as possible. And, you know, I'd like to give the views of the people that have suffered it,
right?
And the view of the person who's looking at the whole body. So yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you.
We'll stay connected. I gotta run.
Totally.
Thanks,
Take
guys.
care.
Bye, Nancy. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Did you stop recording, Dale?